In conjunction with Lower Macungie Township, our Historical Society initiated and orchestrated a Barnstar project in 2018. Eric Claypool and Patrick Donmoyer painted the decorative barn stars on the forebay of the Kratzer barn, and lettering was added by John Bond. The stars are usually considered to be decorative, but some argue that they have ancient symbolic roots. The artistic touches complement the historic design and construction elements of the barn. The forebay, which tops the lower recessed stable wall, serves as the front wall of the granary, and it contains a winnowing door for the wagon bay. The stable wall contains several doors which would have been entries to the animal stables. The pilar eck, or L-shaped stone corner at the front of the basement of the barn, provides end wall reinforcement and a place to locate a cupboard or pegs to store harnesses. This barn contains an unusual arched stone wagon bay, put log holes, which held scaffolding while the stone wall was being built, are still visible in the interior wall of the bay. Jacob Schuler owned most of this property in 1862. His son Moses and his wife Marianne assumed ownership by 1876. The barn appears to be much older than the 1880 date mark that Moses' son, Samuel A. Schuler, who would have been 17 years old at that time, left on the inside wall of the granary. The granary was used for grain storage. Boards could be added or removed to the front of each bin to adjust for volume and height of grain and ease of access. This forebay bank barn is believed to have been built before 1830 for a few of the following reasons. Stone-to-peak standard barns such as this barn, with rear wagon doors that swing outward, were typically built between 1810 to 1850, and vertical ventilator slits, which increased ventilation for stored crops, were featured in barns built prior to 1820 to 1830. In addition, the timber framing with marriage marks and hand-hewn rafters and the use of wide horizontal, unbeaded boards in the mouse-stead wall indicate pre-1850 to 1860 construction. Mouse-stead walls were used to separate the end bays of the forebay barn. The end bays were used for crop storage, and ladders were built into the bents or internal framing units to access crops that might have been stacked all the way up to the ceiling. A hay hole in the mouse-stead wall was a passageway for hay to be forked to the animal stables below. Someone had been practicing his artistic talents by scribing rosettes into the mouse-stead wall. The center two wagon bays were used for wagon storage and as a threshing floor. The stone-lined, grass-covered bank at the rear of the barn provides easy access to the second-floor wagon bays. Lloyd Kratzer was born in Maxitawney Township in 1910. In 1921, Allentown businessman Fred Newhart conveyed the property to H. William and Emma Kratzer. Their son Lloyd married Marguerite Wanamaker in 1929. Their wedding reception was held here at the farm, which was then known as Spring Valley Farm. It was a popular spot where live music filled the air during picnics and reunions. Lloyd helped his parents to farm potatoes in the surrounding fields, but in 1930 he also started a wholesale potato business. After Lloyd's father died, his mother Emma conveyed the 38-acre farmstead to him in 1947. He stopped growing potatoes and instead focused on his wholesale operation. Lloyd made many modifications to the barn for his wholesale potato business. The hay mow on the east side was converted to a large chute for processing potatoes. The chutes emptied potatoes from the end bay to a downstairs area where they were bagged. Potato sorting equipment was placed in the basement area, which normally would have been used for stabling animals. The wagon bay ceiling was enclosed so the area could be heated during winter months. Tractor trailers and refrigerated railroad cars delivered potatoes grown in states in the eastern U.S. to the warehouse, where they were graded, packaged, and resold. Lloyd's prosperous business grew to handle 10 to 12 trailers of potatoes per day at certain times of the year, making it the largest in the Lehigh Valley. His successful venture was reflected by the role he assumed as director of the Macungie National Bank from 1955 to 1969. The original charming, circa 1812 Kratzer farmhouse was demolished in the mid-20th century to make way for Lloyd and Marguerite's new one-story brick home with a walkout basement. Today, large butternut trees can be seen beyond the spot where Stone Spring House was located to the left of the driveway. Lloyd died in 1978. After Marguerite died in 1991, her heirs inherited the 38-acre farmstead. Lower Macungie Township purchased the farm in 1993 and then added 4 more parcels over the next decade. 50 acres of the farm are currently leased to a corn farmer.
This is Sarah Pandl, and I've been invited here at the Bartholomew Center, which is the home of the Lower Macungie Township Historical Society Museum, to talk to you about the Kratzer farm and the plan that was put together just a few years ago for a unique type of park in the township. To back up a little bit, we had done some planning work on a greenway and trails plan for the township. And that identified the Kratzer farm as the hub for a trail system and also for a greenway system centered around the Little Lehigh Creek. So as we looked at the potential for this property in the planning process, that was one of the guiding principles. How to get people in here safely, where could they park, and then what kind of a trail system could we place on the property that would respect the unique characteristics, and set up a number of different kinds of experiences for people using the park. So when you look at the plan, in the center of it, how this connects to the greenway and all the trails that are planned in the township. Lower Macungie Township has fragments of trails put in along the creek and the potential for up to 14 miles of trails. And this site, with the trailhead and the connection through along the Little Lehigh, is a critical linchpin for that. So a lot of this plan talks about the trail planning and connections through to other parts of the township. What resulted in over a year's worth of work with Alta Planning and Design, township staff who had a lot of input, both from the public works side and also on the planning side, and the project management side, and how to make a practical and workable plan, and from the residents, many of who have long histories with this property. A site plan like this, and I think you'll see a closer picture of it, resulted. A significant amount of the property is planned for agricultural use. In fact, the township recently preserved, I think, about 30 acres of the site as a farm with Lehigh County, so it can never be developed. And the concept is to have a working farm there, a CSA, where people can use the productive soil of the park and not only demonstrate how modern farming techniques can be used and sustainable farming techniques can be used, but also for people to walk by as a scenic resource. It includes the potential for greenhouses and the potential for solar panels, and at anchoring the one corner of the farm would really be an interesting experience to walk through. In the center of the park is the mine hole and the barn. And that offers a lot of opportunity for passive recreation. The mine hole is planned to be a fishing hole with a pier that comes out, so people who have accessibility issues or young kids can safely experience fishing there. It needs some cleanup around the edges, but it actually would be a very good passive recreation experience, as well as just a lovely scenic backdrop. When the property was acquired, there was an environmental study done to look at the water quality, and it ended up being one of the cleanest mine holes that the scientists had seen, because there had been no dumping. And in fact, it's spring fed, and I know from some of the people who live nearby that there are fish in it. So as a fishing hole, it makes a lot of sense. It just needs the edges cleaned up, and then access and handicap access available so that it's accessible to everybody in the community. The barn, but it could be used much more in an active way to tell the history of farming in the township and farming practices. On a personal note, and as someone who moved here from another state, I moved here from California, when I see a stone barn, and I live in a stone barn, but when I see the barn at the Kratzer farm, I'm so thankful that the township has invested in preserving it, because there really is nothing else like it outside of this region. And as someone who moved here, I fell in love with the stone architecture that we have in our area, and I'm very pleased that that's the center part of this park. One of the concepts in the plan is to bring farming implements and have them along the trail as a way of connecting people to the agricultural past, but also as an educational tool, so people understand more about how Lower Macungie Township evolved from a farming community to what it is now, which is a more residential community and home to many more people. The trail would then continue on its way to Lower Macungie Road, and that's the most active part of the plan. The portion of the park that comes off of Willow Lane is proposed to continue the community gardens that are there, to expand those, to provide for parking and a trailhead so that people can easily get to the site, and also a playground for children. And the playground concept in the plan is really neat. It's an agriculturally, architecturally designed playground for kids with elements that mimic farming, and it's just very fun. It'd be unique. It would be something that only you would see at this park. And so that's the more active section, which is closer to where the access is. There's also a significant reclamation renovation for the natural environment. Along the creek, actually it's already started with Wildlands Conservancy. They've planted riparian species there over the last couple of years to help with flood control, but also to restore the native landscape along the Little Lehigh Creek. And over the years you'll see that maturing, and it'll be even more lovely. That area, I should say, is currently used for fishing, and fishing access will remain, and I think the fishing will be improved because of the shade and the introduction of more native species. One of the community concerns as we were planning this park came from the residents in Rolling Meadows, which is adjacent to a good section of the boundary of the park. They were worried about the impact of heavy use of people on trails and their privacy. And as we looked at that area, we realized that there's a remnant woodland there. There's also a boundary with PPL power lines, and that the trail would have to be moved back, and that there was an opportunity to reestablish a woodland in that area. Serves so many purposes. It's a lovely opportunity to restore a natural system that was there. It also helps to clean stormwater that would go and provide water quality benefits to Little Lehigh Creek where that property drains. A picnic grove can be established there. and it affords more privacy to the residences nearby. So the plan also includes a forested area. I'll show you here. This is a forested area, and you can see the homes adjacent. So this would all be wooded to protect them and also to provide for cleaner water draining to the park and to the creek. So as I walk you through what I just talked about, here's the farm area, CSA to preserve farm. Then you get to more of an interpretive farm area in the center of the site. Here's the mine hole. Here is the active area with parking, community gardens, children's playground, and picnicking in this woods that are being reestablished. The black line all the way around, and it points connecting through, is an extensive trail system. So as you can see, this is a sustainable park unique to the township. Camp Olympic does use some of the same principles, but this takes it farther. And being in the center of the community and providing a linchpin for connecting neighborhoods to the greenway and also an extension of the trail system, it's a unique and special park that will be developed as available over the. I want to mention that none of this would have been possible, none of this planning effort would have been possible without a successful grant application to the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. They provided half the funding, the township provided the other half of the funding for the plan, but they also provided us with a lot of guidance and excitement because this is a unique plan for the state. So it has garnered a lot of attention outside of the Lehigh Valley and outside of Lower Macungie Township, and the township should be very proud of how we use the grant money to provide for this blueprint for that property.
Hi, I'm Ron Beitler. I'm president of the Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners, and I've been serving in that capacity since 2014. A few years ago, we drafted a master plan, and this involved a number of residents as well as staff. And Sarah really helped with that effort, working in conjunction with a gentleman named Adam Sapli from a firm called Alta Planning. We're very lucky that supervisors many years ago had the foresight to acquire all this land. The Kratzer Farm Park is the geographic center of the township, and it's immediately accessible, certainly even more so once the Greenway network is more fully implemented. It's accessible to thousands of township residents, whether by bike or by foot. The Little Lehigh River, which is a Class A spring-fed cold water trout stream, is really an amazing asset, and it's really going to be featured prominently in the Kratzer Farm Park in a way that folks are going to be able to come up to its banks and really experience the river in a hands-on fashion, whether it be fishing or taking off your shoes and dipping your feet into the river or seeing some of the springs. As soon as we figure out a way to get this plan funded, I'm thinking that the first couple of things that end up happening will be building a parking lot off the community gardens off of Bogey Road, and then hopefully after that we'll figure out a way to start funding the 2-mile walking path around the perimeter, and then that'll again hopefully cross Willow Lane and punch through across Mill Creek Road into the rest of the established and planned greenway system. We're also right now in the middle of moving forward an application with the county. The application has been filled out, it's in process to permanently preserve about 20 to 30 acres of the Kratzer Farm Park as preserved farmland. So this is an area of the park that's been earmarked for farmland as part of the master plan. It's potentially where the community-supported agriculture component could go at some point in the future. And while the park is always going to be a park, it's always going to be preserved, we felt as though putting it into the actual Lehigh County Farmland Preservation Program just further supports and bolsters the idea that this is a park that's has a centralized theme and pays dedication to and homage to this township's agricultural past. So In addition to the walking trails, the meadows, the community gardens, whatever ends up happening in the barn and other structures, this will always remain an active and working farm property, which is really cool. So it really is a unique entity in the Lehigh Valley as an active working farm park. So right now we're just looking for the right opportunity to present itself as far as what we end up doing with that beautiful barn. And even beyond, the Kratzer farm plan, one of the things that the township has been focused on over the last couple of years is how can we make our barn inventory within the township, not just the ones that we own, but also the ones that are within the private sector hands. What can we do to make sure that these barns remain economically viable as an incentive to lovingly, maintain them. And so it's the same thing with the Kratzer farm barn, where we're just looking for that right opportunity. It could very well be a private-public partnership with that barn to figure out what the best use is, but we're very much committed to make sure that it has a use that's public. Right now, of course, it's being used by our township public works, so it's not necessarily a use that's open to the public, so to speak. But in the future, I'm definitely convinced that we'll find that right use to make sure that barn is opened up to the public and utilized as an amenity that people can go into and put their hands on and really walk around within and really get the feel for the barn from the inside and outside. The township finances are in great shape as far as making sure that we're able to pay for the maintenance obligations that we already have, but moving forward, in order to do some more ambitious things, some new things, and to move forward new park projects like the Kratzer farm, we're going to have to find some more sources of revenue. So one thing that we've been kicking around is actually creating a Lower Macungie Township Foundation, so a nonprofit entity that would be able to solicit donations from our township corporate and major business partners, and hopefully we'll get that foundation going as a way to collect tax-deductible donations to fund things like the Kratzer Farm Park, so that we can move projects like that forward without having to necessarily do tax increases. The township heads the direction of establishing a foundation. There could be the potential in the future for a Friends of Kratzer Farm organization that would serve to provide guidance and also help us raise funds to complete this park project. So there's definitely opportunity to get involved, and I would reach out. This is, as I mentioned before, this is a very popular plan. I think there's a lot of buy-in with it with residents. They want to see it move forward. They want to see it funded. And so the more that township commissioners hear that, the more likely it is that we figure out a way to get this thing funded. This plan is not something that we wanted to draft this master plan and have it sit in the shelf and collect dust. We have every intention of moving it forward, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to do that now.